Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. This is the #1 daily radio show for realtors looking for a no BS, authentic, real-time coaching experience. What's really working in today's market, how to generate more leads, make more money, and have more time for what you love in your life. And now your hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
Welcome back. This is, of course, Real Estate Coaching Radio. Some numbers came in last night, and I wanted to thank all of you for having this continue to be the #1 listened to daily podcast for real estate agents. We have well over 20 million downloads since we started the podcast, which is extraordinary. So thank you for your continued support. It means the world to us. We have a very special topic for all of you today that I know you're going to love, and this is going to be probably a two-part show. It's how to take 3 listings now. How about that?
That's right. And every single one of you needs at least 3 listings now. So if you need more than 3 listings or you're used to doing that, lather, rinse, repeat, and adjust as necessary.
But before we get to point number 1, I want to remind all of you guys that Julie and I are indeed with eXp Realty. And we get questions about that from time to time. Well, really, the question comes in the form of, I'm thinking about changing brokers, or I've just got my license, I want to join a brokerage, or I've been at my same brokerage for a long period of time, and now I'm, nothing's really changed for me financially, and I'm ready to upgrade my brokerage experience. What are my options? Well, let's have a conversation about that. And we've made it very easy for you. First of all, everyone is, I know, EXP curious is what we are fond of calling agents nowadays. And so if you're EXP curious and you're just getting started on your journey to learn more about EXP, we have created a great website with some videos for you to learn more about EXP Realty. Just text the letters EXP to 47372. Just text the letters EXP to 47372, and we'll text you back a link to the website, and you can check out everything you need to know about EXP. Now, a lot of you will have already made your decision to move to EXP, and you're looking for someone to be your personal sponsor. And for those of you who are looking for a personal sponsor, Julie and I are personally applying for the job, formally applying for the job of being your sponsor at EXP Realty. So if you're interested in having Julie and I personally sponsor you at EXP Realty, please text me directly, which is 512-758-0206. So if you're ready to join EXP Realty and you're ready to choose a sponsor that's going to be very proactive in your success in real estate and life in general, please do feel free to text me directly, 512-758-0206. All right, so we'll get to our point number 1 in a second, but Julie received an email the other day that she feels compelled to read to all of you.
Yes. This is from fellow Julie, different last name, Julie Schlechte. So if you guys have any referrals to Tampa, Florida, she is your gal. This is a longtime podcast listener and coaching client.
And we are reading this with permission.
I did ask her permission on this. And longtime listeners, you will hear many shades of previous podcasts as I go through this. It should take maybe 5 minutes or less here, but I think that this should resonate with so many people. I'm using this as an example of somebody who's been very coachable as of late. And Julie Schlechte in Tampa says, "Hi, Julie. A few months ago, you sent me a text that truly opened my eyes. It was regarding my fear," she says in parentheses, "a story of gaining weight and becoming successful in real estate. You said I can still work out." She's pretty much obsessed with a certain kind of workout called bar, which I also have done.
Which is super hard.
Super hard, and definitely does the trick. She said, "You said I can still work out at bar, stay in shape, but in order to do what I need to do in real estate, my life couldn't be exercise focused right now." Think about the balance myth, right? A light bulb went off in my head. So for the past few months, I've been focused on shifting my focus, or obsession really, from bar to real estate. Not easy, but I'm doing it. My husband is doing what's called Mission 60. It's a 60-day deliberate discomfort challenge.
That's something we should have thought of.
I know. Well, listen to this. You'll like this. The creator is an ex-Navy SEAL.
There you go.
I don't think you're ever ex. I think you're just retired Navy SEAL, right? Amazing guy. And Mark's retired military, so he's all into that kind of thing. I also love a challenge, so I had an idea. I decided to create a real estate, mainly lead generating plus mindset challenge for myself. Not woo-woo mindset, but get and keep your head screwed on straight and focused kind of mindset. I started the same day as his challenge, and we've been going at it together yet separate, if that makes sense. Now, that made me think of goal setting. That made me think of our mindset series from last week, right? Our marriage series. She says, "I'm only on day 15, but wow, I just wanted to share with you that I've been doing things that I've been avoiding for years. All right. So for the past 15 days, she goes on to talk about her schedule, ideal daily schedule, like we talk about in the real estate treasure map.
Well, so she is basing her plan on the real estate treasure map because I
Yes.
read this. And so the real estate treasure map, by the way, for those, we always have to remember there's a lot of new listeners
That's
this time of
true.
year especially.
Yep.
If you guys don't have your real estate treasure map, it is free for you to download. It is your business and life plan. It is absolutely the foundational element of everything on our podcast. It's a key element in our best-selling book, Harris Rules, and certainly it's the first thing we ask all of you guys to do when you become coaching clients is complete your real estate treasure map. It is free for all of you. Just text the word Harris, our last name, Harris to 47372, and we'll text you back a link to download it. And remember, message and data rates may apply.
Yes, so Julie goes on to say, I created a binder with the things that you and Tim talk about, 3 things that create success and wealth. Number 1, your willingness to do what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level. Number 2, embrace the fact that repetitious boredom pays off. And number 3, know your early warning signs.
Boy, she is
all
a
podcasts, right?
She is a Harris coaching client. You can tell.
Yes, and goes to the daily premier coaching sessions. I transcribed that and I also recorded it. I read and listen to that on the plane taking off analogy every day. I practice my scripts every day. I make lead generating calls every day. Expireds and for sale by owners right now. First couple of days, it was just 15 minutes. I hope you guys listening are paying attention to this. The first couple of days was just 15 minutes. I was literally nauseous. Even though I've got a lot of sales experience and I'm very good on the phone connecting with people, I still had massive fear. But I know it's all an illusion, and I did it anyway.
It is an all illusion.
That's right. It's all made up.
Quick coaching. There's 2 types of fear. There's psychological fear and there's real fear. Real fear is what your husband experienced when he was in the military, or the Navy SEAL that's training him experienced when he was in the military. The psychological fear and the real fear manifest the same way, have the same triggers inside your body, same chemical reactions. So when you're thinking about doing something that makes you feel fear, for example, picking up the phone and calling a FSBO, you're getting the exact same physiological reaction as if, for example, you were in combat. You guys get it? So what you have to realize is one will actually kill you, being in combat,
Indeed.
and the other will not. And so once you separate that, and you then say, okay, my circadian brain is telling me to feel this massive wave of panic. I'm going to choose not to react to that massive wave of panic because I realize, as Julie just said correctly,
Email Julie
and my wife Julie just said correctly, it is fake fear.
That's right. So Julie goes on to say, then I went to 30 minutes and now I'm at 45 minutes plus making my follow-up calls. I listen to your podcast every day, go to the Facebook Live coaching every day, and watch the replays if I can't be there live.
So
Yes.
Julie, a suggestion, Julie, the emailer, a suggestion for you would be to don't track time anymore until get into the habit, because what's going to happen is you're just going to run down the clock. You're tracking the wrong thing. Start tracking, not even exactly. Don't even worry about, some people are going to tell you dials and contacts. All that stuff is just goofiness. Track the actual appointments you set. So if you're really, Julie, when you're ready, which sounds like you are now, to go to the next level, you have to stay on the phone until you set one pre-qualified listing appointment. So I'm going to tell you guys a true story. Julie and I, my wife Julie and I, this was in 2006. We'd been coaching at that point for a long period of time. Julie got her real estate license again, and the market was starting to change. And we wanted to make sure we still had our edge and the ability to set appointments.
Yep.
And this is the straight up truth. So we took a week off from coaching and we prospected. And we had not prospected at that point consistently for probably 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And so we started prospecting again, and in 1 week, and I'm not making this up, and I think it's hilarious to say this, in 1 week just from prospecting, and we had not, again, done this for a long period of time, and this was in 2006, we made over $100,000, and Julie, this is the funny part, Julie, my wife, was the top producing agent in her office.
I know, isn't that funny?
For listings taken.
After
And
a
all
week.
we did was call
I know.
expireds. But
That's right.
here's how we kept ourselves motivated. Julie and I had an agreement that we are going to compete every day to see who set the first pre-qualified listing appointment. So it wasn't contacts, it wasn't dials, it wasn't lead follow-up, it wasn't nothing. It was an actual pre-qualified listing appointment, and whoever won that particular day won, and the other person had to make dinner that night.
That's right. Keeping it fun, right?
And it totally worked.
I know. So Julie's results, you might ask yourself from doing this. She writes, my fear of the phone is fading. I never in a million years thought I could make calls for more than 5 days in a row, but 15? And on Sundays, never. Oh, the stories we tell ourselves. My mind is so much clearer now.
Hey, Julie, Saturday morning is the key time to prospect, too, by the way. Proactively lead generate. We can't say prospect because it gives people hives.
Gives them the willies.
So proactively lead generate on Saturday morning because everybody's home. And also proactively lead generate whenever the change of the month falls on the weekend or a holiday because everyone's going to be home. They don't know their listing expired. And the other agents are not working. They're taking the time off. Work when other agents aren't working. Do what other people aren't willing to do, and you'll have a life that they can't even imagine having.
That's right. And by the way, Julie has also become media free and writes, no more anxiety about what's happening in the world. I know that if it's important, I'll find out.
100%.
I'm way more focused and disciplined. I've gotten 3 hot leads and 1 listing appointment. I'm not hanging on to people I can't get in touch with and calling and calling and calling. Nope. I was always this crazy lead hoarder, but not anymore. I'm getting in the groove of calling and using my pre-listing package. I've been going to bar at noon, and the world did not come to an end. Next, I will be changing it to 4:30 classes so I can listen to more of the coaching calls.
But Julie said this other thing that was really important. She's not trying to build a big, deep well of leads that she's dripping on.
Lead hoarders.
I mean, I like lead hoarding, right? That is stupid because long-term lead follow-up has been proven countless times to not work despite all the billions of dollars that agents spend every year on systems to long-term lead follow-up. You just heard Julie in her email say very clearly she knows that when she gets them on the phone, they're either going to set an appointment or now or they're into the near future, and she's not going to start hoarding them and hoping and praying that they're going to grow into something else because that creates a false sense of security and it causes you to be lazy and complacent about really learning how to set pre-qualified listing appointments. That is the bottom line truth.
It is indeed. And we'll close by this last paragraph where she writes, there's so much that's improved and I'd love to share it, but I'd be here forever. Just wanted to let you know that even though I've been behind the scenes quietly doing my thing, that's how I roll, you've truly made a difference. I know that it's me doing the work, but there's something special about you guys that I trust you and what you're telling me. Granted, it's taken me a while, but I'm all in now, and that's what matters. Thanks again, Julie. I'll send another update in a couple of weeks. This is happening, she says.
Hey, Julie, the key
Shout
here,
out.
remember the plane taking off analogy, Julie? You know what I'm talking about. So the plane taking off analogy, you got to acknowledge where you are. You barely cleared the runway. So you got to keep the throttle down. This is where you're going to have to put in the most work. You're sitting and you're the pilot. The plane is rocking and rolling, shaking, and you can hear the dishes clamoring around, and the passengers are holding on to their seat, the whole thing, right? You got to keep the throttle down. Otherwise, you're going to have to circle back, and you're going to have to go back to the runway and do it all over again. So keep the throttle down until you're at cruising altitude. Cruising altitude, Julie, is the number of listings you must have at all times to meet or exceed your financial expectations based on what you completed in the real estate treasure map. That might be 5, that might be 10, that might be 50, whatever the number was. You work your ass off until you get that number of listings. Yes, of course, they'll sell along the way, thank God, right?
Yes, that's right.
But that's how you create consistent cash flow. If you have 10 listings at all times in every market in the United States, let's say 3 or 4 of them are in the process of coming active for sale, and you're going to have probably another 3 or 4 that are always in contract, a couple that are about to go into contract. That's how you create consistent cash flow.
That's cruising altitude.
And your life then becomes correct. And then your life becomes about replacing the listings that sell. So you are never done in this business. You always have to be prospecting for more listings, which, by the way, is true for every single business. There's never a point of being done in any single business, ever. You're always going to have to generate new business. You can create passive income with EXP Realty through revenue share, right? Mm-hmm. That's something we talk about. Passive income, EXP revenue share. Wow, I finally, decoded the coda ring. Or I can buy a bunch of rental properties, the same thing. And I don't have to work. Wrong you are, because if you stop recruiting agents, you're essentially not going to qualify for revenue share. If you stop taking care of your rental properties or managing your property managers in our case, then you're not going to have very good profitable rental properties, and you'll find that your cash flow sucks. You are never done. You're always going to have to be making sure that you're staying at cruising altitude, and that's in all aspects of your life. For example, your bar class.
That's true. And, it's funny. You and I went to a little art talk, last week? And it wasn't that many people. It was interesting stuff here, in the neighborhood. And this particular artist had been featured all over the world, had installations in, museums and industrial places.
We went for the free wine, just for the record.
Yeah, it was something to do.
I'm kidding.
Okay? But you and I looked at each other, and you said something was funny. You said, oh, I get it. This is a sales pitch.
Yeah.
For those of you who are fantasizing about just doing your art all day and following your passion, well, this guy still was doing this art talk. Yes, it was all about his art and look at what he's doing and all of these different things that he can talk about. But he was there to get new clients.
Yeah, it was funny, actually.
So just for example.
Yeah, all these hoi polloi types,
art collectors.
And all their fancy this and their fancy the other things. And Julie and I didn't get a seat. We were standing in the back. And I was just watching this. He was German, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was this German guy. And his art was beautiful. And it was kinetic art, that kind of thing. But it was hilarious. But this whole thing of his, you're going to go to this private invitation only thing where the artist is going to talk about how his whole,
his aesthetic
process to become an artist. And it was all great.
It was absolutely.
But it was fascinating because he was selling.
That's right. So lest you all forget.
But not like, and this one is only $39,000 and this one is only $39.
Not at all.
He was trying to get you interested in what he was selling, but the whole thing was just fascinating. But that's life, guys.
And by the way, he had his equivalent of a PLP laid out on the table.
He
so
did.
he was definitely promoting himself.
Nothing
wrong with that.
It was a well-done flyer.
It totally was.
A threefold broshure.
Indeed.
All right, so the topic we're talking about today is, are you ready? Of course you are. How to take 3 listings now. And this is going to be the best part of this, is that nothing that we're going to tell you requires a referral fee. Does not require buying leads, it does require work, does require you doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it, does require, doing the real work of real estate, does not require making a bunch of dumb TikTok videos.
Nope.
Does not require you, trying to be a social influencer. This is the real work of real estate. And first of all, we need to clear the air about something. And just this morning when, Julie and I were in the gym, we ran into someone, frankly, who should have known better, who was arguing that the real estate market is a big bubble. Now, should have known better is because he's very smart in other businesses, but not real estate. And he thought, well, this time is just like last time. No, sir, it is not. And so Julie mostly took the time to write down some very salient points. Now, we're going to not vamp on these too much because it's mostly for you guys to feel more, I think,
educated.
Educated, but also sanguine, knowing that you're not going to be selling somebody into something that's going to turn into a grenade with a pin pulled down the road.
That's it, which is what a lot of you fear, and we respect that, and we understand that. And, the conversation in the gym this morning is representative. We probably have 2 or 3 of those experiences a week, and we're coaching all the time. We're podcasting all the time. You guys are out there in the real estate field. You're going to have these conversations.
But you need...
And some of you are not having these conversations because you live in fear, or you yourself are thinking the market's going to crash.
So I think, Julie, how many points did you write down with this one?
This is part 1. Today is the education piece, and then tomorrow we get into the listing part.
Okay. You could tell Julie's parents were school teachers, can't ya?
That's okay.
All right. So what we're gonna do? Julie's gonna read to you 6 points. Now you're not gonna be able to write these points down because a lot of you are like Julie and you're in bar class or whatever as you listen to us. Yep. So we will post these notes, and do go and download these notes on our website, timandjulieharris.com. We're also going to post them on iTunes. iTunes is allowing us to put these long-form notes in our show descriptions, which is great. They should be on Spotify. They should be everywhere else. But here's the deal. You cannot download our notes unless you're going to give us a 5-star review on iTunes.
That's right. Not allowed.
You will feel terrible after listening if you do not give us a 5-star review. The guilt will be so overwhelming for not having given us a 5-star review on iTunes, you just won't be able to look yourself in the mirror.
Exactly.
Okay. So there's our little
there's the guilt.
Our grandma guilt. All right. So remember, here it is. You want to take 3 listings? We're going to show you how. And these are the things, the head clutter you need to clear out first.
That's right. So education, motivation, getting you into action. Here's the education part. As we have often reminded you, the market is not headed for an apocalyptic crash, raining discounted inventory on your town. Here's why. Point number 1, demographic demand. According to the National Association of Realtors, 45 million millennials, that's people aged 26 to 35, are ready to make a move this year. Rental payments are outpacing mortgage payments by 7%. Only 5% of rentals are even vacant at all, keeping supply down and payments high. FOMO, that's fear of missing out, is still playing a big role in the desire to purchase, especially before rates inch higher and higher. And there are other demographics, but that is the leading one right now.
So let me build a little bit on this because it's important.
Yes.
And this is, again, very confusing, but this is important. We remind you of this all the time because we want you to feel comfortable, again, and confident when you're essentially helping someone purchase a house. Okay, here's the bottom line. Now might be the best time, and obviously last year would have been better, 5 years even better, but
Sure.
Now it will most certainly be the best time in virtually everyone's life to buy a property. Why? Because the inflation is real. The inflation that's entered into the economy is going to, and Julie and I found a new statistic this morning that'll blow you away. Let's just tell them. The year-over-year increase in prices have on homes.
19.9% nationwide.
Okay, now in the year-over-year, homes have appreciated or inflated is the real answer, by basically 19%. Now, I want you guys to remember, that is, February to February.
Yep.
Goldman Sachs predicted that there was going to be an additional 16% inflation of homes this year. There already has been, based on some numbers that are coming out, 15% appreciation. So Goldman Sachs was maybe underestimating the amount of appreciation. But here, any way you slice into your dice,
Prices are going up.
Prices are going up. So if you'd purchased a home this time last year to the end of 2022, you could be looking very much at having a house that went up in value by 25 or 30%. Or more. Now, here's the thing that's really mind-boggling. Let's say you locked in one of these, like people are all fearful of rates going up, and rates going up will knock out marginal buyers.
True.
But the whole rate going up, conversation, rates are projected to go up by maybe a point. And a lot of the rate increases have already basically settled into mortgage rates. It does not matter, even if rates go up another point, because here's why. If you purchase the average sale price home in the United States is approaching $500,000. If you purchase a $500,000 house right now and you put down, say, $50,000 or whatever your down payment is, Julie heard something, the average first-time buyer is putting down an average of $30,000, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So what's that work out to be? 5% in essence.
Right.
So they're putting down whatever they're putting down. Let's use 5% as the example. So they have a mortgage balance of, say, $470,000.
Yep.
I'm going to guess the all-in payment on that with interest rates.
I already calculated it. Okay,
Yep.
So, and I did do this. This is research for next week's show. But let's see. I did use the average for the nation, and I used those numbers. The difference between, like, today's rate, I think, is like 3.4%. If it were to go to 4.4, 4.5, the difference on a purchase price at that level is about $300.
Okay, per month.
Per month. It goes
$3,600
from
a year.
like $1,800 to $2,100 is the difference.
It's not nothing, but it's not.
But it's not gajillions either.
Exactly. And if $300 will take some lower end marginal buyers out for sure. But that's always been the case. Not everyone's meant to own a home. Because if $300 is the difference between you buying a house and not buying a house,
You shouldn't be buying a house.
because how are you going to pay for the furnace when it went kaput? How are you going to pay for the roof leak if you're that on the edge financially?
That's right.
It's just not the right time for you to buy a house. There might be a time better in the future, or you buy a house in a different community. Those are types of things that financial. But so here's the moral of the story. To rent a house, I think we ran across statistics on this as well.
Mm-hmm.
The average $500,000 value home now is renting for significantly more than it would cost if you did the mortgage
That's
that
right.
Julie
In
just
most
described.
markets, $3,000 to $3,500.
And the house, I'm going to guess, basically
About $500,000. Roughly.
right, $500,000 is going to cost you $3,500 a month
To rent.
But if you were to do a mortgage on it, it would probably cost you $800 to $1,000 less.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, now here's the nice thing: you are going to get, and all your buyers are going to get, long-term fixed rate mortgages at say 4%. If inflation, remember we just told you, and then we are being conservative, has caused real estate to go up by, say, 20% just this year alone, let's say 15%, it doesn't really matter. What's your total carrying cost on that $500,000 house? Well, you have had, let's say, $30,000 in house payments and maintenance and upkeep, but the house itself has appreciated by $65,000 or $70,000. That is going to be the biggest financial win over the coming generations that those folks that you're helping to buy a house might ever have. Purchasing a house now when everyone's saying there's a boom, houses are all-time higher. Okay, don't compare this time to last time. This time we have massive double-digit inflation.
Yeah, and here's another thing that you guys don't always look at, the math, right? So yes, prices are high and going higher. That is true. However, let's say that they go up even 15%. 15% of a higher number is more money than, say, prices didn't do that, and we're talking about $150,000 average sale price that goes up by 15%. Who cares, right?
And a year from now, that payment of $2,500 or whatever it is, let alone 5 years from now, is going to seem like the biggest bargain ever. And if they keep that house and they sell it, they're going to cash flow it. And never forget, unless you're homeless, you're going to have a house payment. There's no such thing as a paid off house because you're going to have property taxes. You're going to have other things. So wherever you live, as long as you're alive, and we could even argue that you're even having to, when you plot, you're still having to pay an expense to be
You're
plotted.
still in real estate, man.
You're still in real estate. No, you're literally in the game.
Yeah.
But anyway, the moral of the story is, macabre humor aside, forgive us. We still think it's funny.
Yeah.
But the fact is that you will always have a housing expense. And right now, with interest rates, despite the fact that prices are escalating so high, is going to possibly be the last best time for most people to buy a house in their lifetimes. And that's something that is mind-boggling, but true. And again, I'm going to go back to it. Inflation. People are just starting to understand how that actually feels. We've been talking about it endlessly for the last 2 years on this podcast. We had Peter Schiff on this podcast talking about it. Now you guys are starting to feel it, aren't you? Your grocery bills are going up. Other expenses are going to go up. You can make it so your house payment doesn't go up all the while all the other things go up.
Isn't that awesome?
It is awesome. It's amazing.
It is. But here's the thing. You guys who are listening need to be able to have that same conversation with your prospects and your clients. Not, yeah, I know prices are going up. Maybe the market will crash. No, that is not what we're talking about.
And on our next podcast, we are going to be giving you actual scripts on what to say to the folks that are saying to you, I would sell if I could find a house to buy. We're going to tell you what to say and how to say it.
Very specific on that. Okay. Point number 2, builders can't keep up. Now, it is true that housing starts have gone way up since COVID began, but the cost of materials has tripled for lumber, increased 22% for steel. Many manufacturers are still behind on shipping critical components. From toilets to refrigerators, the creation and delivery of these items is still behind. So even though the builders want to build more, they're being stymied by this.
Well, we just had one of our properties restained, of all things. It's a wood house.
It's expensive, man.
And it was not even a big house, and it was, what, 17 grand?
Almost 18, yeah.
And last year, when we got the estimate originally, it was like 12. Well, and we actually saw it was a cost plus deal, so we get the receipts. Everything had gotten more expensive. Bleach was more expensive.
Everything.
It was nuts.
Yes. So where it was okay. So 3. Even paint was hard to get. Nationwide, the average cost to build a house is up 24%, $24,000 on average. So yes, you can go to new construction, but builders aren't keeping up at the level they need to. So
and that's another reason why you're seeing the resale homes are typically in any market. New construction is going to be more desirable than resale for all the normal reasons. Everything's new. But what's happening is now the builders can't keep up. The expenses are rising. Interest rates are going to rise. The builders are actually going to increase prices because the more well-off buyers are going to have more elasticity in what they can afford. They're not going to be knocked out by interest rates going up another point, thus increasing the average sale price. So if new construction in your market right now is on par with what resale is, but new construction now goes up by 50 or 75 grand, which it will or more, resale is going to go up as well.
That's right. Okay, so remember, these are all of your talking points why the market is not going to come to a screeching halt. These are all the motivations that keep it going. Point number 3, institutional investors are gobbling up anything under $300,000 and almost always paying cash. In Phoenix, for example, fully 30% of recent sales have gone to investors, either iBuyers or small investors. Flippers are also buying in these price ranges. I read a report from NAR this morning that said 1 in 5 closings in the past 90 days have gone to investors.
Is that real? Is that like today's statistic?
Yes.
Wow, that's mind-boggling.
Yep. Okay, so point number 4, the coronavirus pandemic is a short-term component stacked upon the long-term trend that we discussed in the previous 3 points. People want more space, more privacy, and now they have the freedom to move markets due to flexible work environments. Again, another factor keeping the housing market hot. Point number 5. Low interest rates continue to add fuel to the fire. Today's rate, literally today, is 3.4% for a 30-year fixed, which is still extremely low. When I wrote that point, I was thinking about all of these buyers that are, especially their first house. If you can lock that in at 3.4%, let's say you're going to move up. You're way more likely to become an investor and keep that house, because why would you give up a 3.4% low payment and rate?
This is something else that I was having a conversation with the guy at the gym this morning, because we're kind of circling the wagons here on a finer point. There will not be any housing crash. There will, because people will need to have a place to stay. They'll need a place to live. And what's going to happen, even if inflation or the inflation of prices or the appreciation of prices levels off to single digit on homes, the homes that they have, the payment they're making on the home will still be will still be less than the equivalent rent. And the other thing to take into consideration is the amount of equity in people's houses. Real estate would have to appreciate or depreciate so much, so fast for people to be equal with what they owe on their mortgages. It's just not going to happen.
The average home-owning American has $180,000 worth of equity in their house. That's the average.
And that's now in February of 2022.
Wait till next month.
Wait till next year, right? You guys get the point of this? So stop looking for a crash. There is no housing crash. There will be little pockets of foreclosures and little pockets of distressed real estate.
Well, sure.
And we talked about that before in our podcast. But on a whole, you guys are smart. Getting a real estate license was the smartest thing you ever did. Because unlike virtually all of your friends and families whose incomes won't keep up with inflation, incomes always trail inflation, and that's what you're going to start seeing. People are going to get pissed because they see the prices rise. Politicians are going to blame the greedy retailers and the greedy producers for trying to take advantage in rising prices. That is BS. The only reason that any company raises prices is because they have to keep their margins.
They're paying more.
They have to raise prices. The last thing any business wants to do is raise prices because it puts them at a competitive disadvantage in the marketplace. So when they start trying to, and they did this back in the 70s too, they started trying to blame the producers for the rising prices opposed to taking the blame themselves for really crappy, essentially the Fed and printing of money and really taking any sort of governmental responsibility for what actually is going to, shock a lot of people, because that is really what we're going to come up against. You're going to see people for the first time in their lives feeling a little bit at start financially on edge and then a lot financially on edge. They're not going to be able to buy what they've been used to buy. They're going to start living. The one thing you never want to have are people feeling fear of and people feeling hungry. If they feel fear and they feel any resemblance of hungry, I grew up in both of those scenarios for at least half my childhood. So trust me when I tell you, it causes people to act in ways they wouldn't have otherwise acted. That's just the reality of it. So what we're entering into is going to be a new experience for many people with regards to inflation. But you are in the perfect position because your pay is increasing with the average sale price. You are going to see your average sale price go up substantially, and your commission is going to go up with it. Mm-hmm. So you are in a blessed position. So congratulations on getting a real estate license.
That's right. So point number 5 was all about you. Stop living in fear of rates going up. 3.4 to 4.4 is not the end of the world. And I wrote this other little mini point, and the highest rate it's ever been is 1981, which was over 18%. Your mom at dinner the other night was we were talking about the house that she bought when she had her real estate license.
Yeah, Century 21.
That's right. And she said, do you know that we paid 17.8% interest rate?
That was in 78.
That's right. And my parents bought their house in 78 as well. And I think they were right up there close to 18%. Point being, guess what? People still bought houses. They still closed.
So let's talk about this. Why won't interest rates go up like they did before, or even like they did in the late 70s, early 80s? Here's why. Because if interest rates go up, and you guys can check me on this, I'm happy to, listen to, you guys should listen to Peter Schiff's podcast. Mm-hmm. He'll educate you as well.
Yep.
And there's a lot of other people having this very same conversation. So it's not just some sort of fringe economic theory. It's fact. If interest rates go up, the amount of interest that the Fed's going to have to pay on the debt is also going to go up. It's untenable. The government cannot allow interest rates to increase in a meaningful way like they did before to reel in inflation, because the debt payments, the amount of money it'll have to pay in interest payments to all the debt that the government currently has, we, the people, currently have, which is close to $30 trillion, will be unsustainable. So they're going to say, we know how to slow inflation down. You put less money in circulation. You make it less attractive for people to spend money. You can raise taxes. You can raise interest rates. You can do all kinds of things. Make it so people are spending less money. Make it so there's less demand. Mm-hmm. But they can't, because if they use the traditional tools, which is raising interest rates, they are going to screw the ability for them to make the interest payments. Now, what will that create for investors? I'm going to just foreshadow some interesting phenomena that I think we're going to be experiencing. We're going to probably within 24 months start seeing the banks offering 6, 7, 8, 9% CDs. We're going to start seeing potentially, you're going to start being able to buy long-term like government T-bills and stuff that are going to also pay similar, very good returns from investment. So if you have the cash, you're going to actually be able to invest in relatively safe, if not as safe as you possibly can get, long-term investments that are going to pay you enormous rates of return over time, with the obviously the compounding effect of the money that you're making. So keep your eyes open. It's not all bad news. If you have money and the ability to invest because you're listening to Julie now, you're becoming a listing agent, you're actually making money in real estate, you're going to see interest, you're going to see opportunities that other people aren't going to be able to take advantage of. Remember what we said. We say this all the time. The greatest fortunes in the history of history have always been made during the greatest times of change. We are in one of those now.
That's right. Last point for today, number 6, record rates of savings. Now, this is a different point than talking about home equity. actual savings in the U.S. and a huge number of all cash transactions, baby boomers have on average $152,000 saved. Generation X, that's us, there's like 3 of us, $66,000, and millennials, $23,000. Stimulus money has accounted for 15% of first-time buyers' down payment money, but Americans currently have saved more than any other time in history of a combined $2.7 trillion. Why is this point playing into our real estate discussion? Because you've got to stop saying this time was just like last time. It is not in any way like last time. In order for there to be a bunch of short sales and foreclosures, people have to not have money, not have jobs, not have equity, not have rising prices. Okay, so these are talking points for you to adopt and adapt. You may want to listen to this podcast more than once so that you can get it into your conversation tools.
But there's another finer point here, too, why it won't be like last time. We have been told by people that were heavily involved in distressed real estate, as we were in our coaching company and our personal investments. We have been told straight up that the government has made it incredibly clear, because remember, the government basically controls the mortgage industry, that they will not allow the servicers, that's the person you make your payment to every month, to essentially do foreclosures in the way that maybe their servicing agreements have indicated that they would. So you're going to see, and you did see this back in 7, 8, and 9. You're going to see all kinds of creative, help the homeowner type programs.
Well, we already had it with the virus, right?
You're right, exactly. I mean,
there's your proof.
We told you guys how to do this 2 years ago. The government made it so that you could actually skip a payment on your house for 12 months, have the unpaid balance tacked on the end of your loan. You don't have to. It's not like you had to pay it back with
no hit to your credit.
You didn't have exactly. It was essentially having no mortgage payment for 12 months.
It was an instant loan mod on the spot with, I think there was one form involved. We showed you guys how to do it. Most of our listeners remember those times, but I bring that up because that's proof that this is not going to be like, when the housing crash
There
happened,
won't be one.
because there's no impetus for it. And because we all have lived through that, and there are different tools than there used to be. Back then in 2007 and 8, nobody knew. It had never happened before. Banks didn't know what to do.
Julie and I were, back then, we went from coaching just essentially, in a great seller's market. And then all of a sudden, I remember in 2006, we started seeing we had coaching clients all over the United States. We started seeing inventory build up in markets where typically there was no inventory. Yep. And then we saw it sell off. We saw this wave this back and forth happen 3 times. And the last time, I remember San Diego, I remember Las Vegas, I remember Miami, I remember Manhattan, Phoenix, right? The inventory built up and it didn't sell off. And then New Century, a subprime mortgage company, if you guys have been in the business for as long as we have, you'll remember, in Irvine, California, failed. And as soon as that happened, then all the dominoes started falling. I remember I was on a coaching call with a client, Mark Chandro, who we're still great friends with, and he had a whole bunch of pendings that all blew out, and he did not know that all of them were subprime. He was flipping them to this lender, and the lender was putting them all on subprime loans. The lender was evidently using New Century. New Century went out of business. All the deals fell out of contract, and the dominoes started to fall all over the country. That is not going to happen now.
And also, by the way, listeners, those types of loans are, by and large, not happening today. Right. Not much. It's a micro percentage, and it was most of the market back then. You're not going to roll into like Bank of America with a 500 credit score and no down payment and a no income verification loan and get approved today.
The only real adjustable rate mortgages that you see are going to be on portfolio loans that are done on upper end real estate non-conforming loans.
Yes.
Jumbos, super jumbos.
But even those have real down payments involved.
Yeah, definitely. But they don't. Those are going to be the ones where you're going to see interest only for 24 months or whatever. But in the meat and potato normal price ranges, there are no loans like that. No. Not really. Or at least nobody's dumb enough to do them, frankly. If you can lock in a 30-year low interest rate mortgage right now, you are absolutely crazy not to do it. And I'll tell you, it's frustrating for Julie and I too, because we've lived our life by having no debt. And I know, some of you, you debt's due, blah, blah, blah. I know we've had these conversations forever. We don't care. We just don't like the effort of having to put a stamp on an envelope. It's too much work. So we have always had the belief that we should have no debt. And so we have a lot of rental properties with no debt. But right now, I have to tell you that if you have the option of paying off your house or you have the option of basically having, given the scenarios of what's happening with inflation and interest rates, you should definitely have a mortgage on the house because the inflation is going to make the payment. Right. Savers right now are the ones that are getting screwed because the money that you have in the bank is actually losing its purchasing power. This is a different time than any of us have ever experienced before. But this is the reason that, again, think about this. Act counterintuitively. People are going to enter in states of fear. When people are fearful, they don't know what to do. When people don't know what to do, they listen to people who do know what to do. That's going to be you because you're going to have listened to this podcast.
That's right. Now, tomorrow, we're going to drill down on what all of you are dealing with who are talking to people on any level at all about real estate. And that is, what is the script? How do you handle, well, that's great. I'd love to cash out of my house. Thanks for the comparative market analysis that you offered me. I can't believe it's worth that. But where am I going to move to? We know you're dealing with that. We're giving you a script to use with 3 very particular categories of people to talk to so you can take 3 listings immediately. But you've got to stop living in fear of, well, what am I going to sell them? I don't want to talk to anybody who's a buyer with a house to sell. What am I going to do about that? So we're going to give you those particular talking points so that you can enthusiastically talk to your past clients, your center of influence, et cetera. And I'll leave you with a quick story from a coaching client, you'll remember this, who the impetus to her starting to call her database was that she lost a listing that she thought was going to come back in the spring market, right? Took it off, couldn't get the desired price at the time. It was basically an expired. Another agent takes it, sells it immediately for significantly more than it expired for. Remember yesterday's conversation about these things, right? Okay, so that made her angry to the point where she decided to actually pick up the phone and talk to her database. Okay, living in fear of the conversation, well, I would sell, but where am I going to go to? She offered a free comparative market analysis, presented it. That seller could not believe that their house was worth that. She said, well, what are you, when I sell it, I know I can sell it in this market. I know I can get you that price, maybe even some more. Well, where are you going to go? It's like you're afraid to ask it, where are you going to go? And you know what that seller said? You get me that price, I'll figure it out.
Hell yeah.
So don't assume that you're thinking,
right?
Austin,
Texas.
yes.
Yeah, I remember this story.
Just don't assume that your job is to think for them.
She thought, the lady didn't believe, wasn't it $3 million?
Oh, this one was 11.
Yeah, $11 million, right. And she didn't know her house was worth $11 million.
No, because it expired at like 8.
Yeah. And so the gal was saying, I can get you $11 million. She got her $11 million. Did she sell for more than 11 or 11?
I think she sold for between 11 and 12.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, talk about a happy expired.
Right.
I'm sorry, this was somebody from past client. But that's the thing. When we tell you, call those expireds, anybody that expired even 90 days ago is going to be able to
last year, this time, listen to yesterday's podcast. But guys, the bottom line is our job is to educate you, to do our best job motivating you. But now it's your job to get into action. The education and the motivation doesn't mean bunk if you're not going to take the action. The action is really all that matters. Listen to the podcast, give us a 5-star review, join us at eXp Realty, become a coaching client. These are all things you can do. But what you must do is you must go out there and help people. Your job as a real estate practitioner is a professional helper. That's what you are.
Yep.
You help solve people's problems. And the problem that these folks have is buying and selling real estate. We prefer you focus on the sellers. That's what we teach you how to do in our Premier Coaching program. So today's podcast is sponsored by Premier Coaching.
That's right.
And many of you guys are ready to join Premier Coaching. And we've made it easy for you. Just text the word Premier to 47372. Text the word Premier to 47372. And you can hop over to our website and you can be on a semi-private coaching call with one of our coaches, maybe today, depending on what time you join, or certainly tomorrow. And just text the word Premier to 47372. And remember, message and data rates may apply. Now, what's your homework? Go over to iTunes, give us a 5-star review. You guys have a fantastic day. We'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.